Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular town council meeting for Tuesday, October 23rd, 2018. Please rise for a moment of silence. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Fishbein.
Here.
Laffin.
Here.
Letourneau.
Here.
Marone.
Here.
Morgenstein. Here. Shortell.
Here.
Testa.
Here.
Zandri. And Chairman Cervoni.
Here. Councilor Zandri did advise me that he does have a work obligation that prevents his attendance tonight. On to the consent agenda, noting that item 3E has been amended to correct a typographical error.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve or accept consent agenda items A through E with 3E as amended.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes. I would just like to note that item 3B on the consent agenda, we accepted on behalf of the police department a donation of $15,000 from Nucor Steel. And I just thought that was noteworthy of mention. On to item 4, there are no items removed from the consent agenda. Item 5, public question and answer period. Going once, twice, 3 times. Close the public question and answer period. Item 6 is to conduct a public hearing and consider an act on an ordinance appropriating $610,000 for the purchase and demolition of 33 North Cherry Street and authorizing the issue of $610,000 bonds of the town to meet said appropriation and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowings for such purpose.
So moved.
We're going to start with the public hearing. So I hereby open the public hearing. I hereby convene the public hearing for the $610,000 appropriation and bond authorization for 33 North Cherry Street purchase. The ordinance, which is the subject of this public hearing, is available to the public and may be obtained at this meeting from the town clerk. Is there a motion and a second to read the title of the proposed ordinance and waive the reading of the remainder of the ordinance, incorporating its full text into the minutes of this meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Laffin, seconded by Councilor Letourneau. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. The title, an ordinance appropriating $610,000 for the purchase and demolition of 33 North Cherry Street and authorizing the issue of $610,000 bonds of the town to meet said appropriation and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowings for such purpose. Are there any comments from the public? Mr. Gross.
The mic.
Yeah, I don't think your mic is miking.
Is the, check the button.
No?
Better now?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Wasn't better. All right, back to the question then. It's $610,000. It says here for planning and other consultants. Planning for what? Is there, I mean, are there dollars appointed to these numbers? Do you have bids already? Do you came up with the 610,000? Because 610's an odd number, not like 650, 600. So do you have quotes already for tearing it down? What does planning and consulting mean? Those type of things.
I think that principally refers to the efforts for demolishing the building. We will need testing, we will need analysis most probably. So the costs are broken down. $411,000 is the purchase price, $170,000 for the demolition, and $29,000 is contingency. But there may be a need for advice with regarding the demolition. There was an environmental review done by the bank, but it needs to be completed by an assessment on the ground as to what may have asbestos, what has lead, etc. So it's an unknown right now, but we need to dispose of whatever is there in a safe manner.
Right. So you got 3 bids and 170 was the low bid to tear down the building? Because you said demolition 170.
Right.
Was that a bid?
Yes, that is the bid.
There were 3.
No, I believe that's an estimate at this point. We will go out to bid.
All right, so so you haven't gone out to bid. That's why I was asking. So these aren't steadfast numbers yet. These are numbers that you're just to
Right.
come up.
We're trying to cover the
with.
cost.
Right. If there's money left over, what happens to that money?
It doesn't get spent if there isn't
Well, I understand, but where does it go? Does it go into the rainy day fund or does it go back into the general fund?
No, we would, part of my cold. It gets canceled out. Any unused portion of it gets canceled out. It's not part of the general fund, so we simply make a bookkeeping entry to reduce the budget, which stands now, we're proposing $610,000. If we spend $590,000, we match that up with $590,000 in bond sales. So that way, everything is equal. So there is no unused funds per se.
All right, so you're not going to raise that money then. So you're not raising the 610,000 to start with. You're going to just raise the money as needed. And
Correct.
and again,
In a way, correct.
to your point then, you're not raising any money then. You're just in turn going to fund this out of the general fund. Again, Mr. Attorney Fozzie's here just for in
No,
case.
we'll be bonding these costs.
You're going to bond?
Yes, it'll be included with another bondage, a larger issue. Yes,
What are you bonding it with then?
we're going to be bonding the. Right now, we'll take a cautious approach. We'll probably bond about $500,000 of it, give or take. And if we have to bond more with a second issue, if the costs come in, let's say $600,000, there's another $100,000 we can bond, or in a future budget, transfer funds out of the general fund, like you just stated. But to take $600,000 out of the general fund to fund the project, right? That's kind of a big chunk. Wouldn't want to do that.
You said you were going to wrap it with something else. What are you wrapping it with?
Correct. Right now, we've got a couple of very active projects. We have the townwide communication system, which has been approved by the council through a couple bond ordinances for $6 million and change. And we've got what we call the Board of Education Capital Phase 2 capital improvement program. And the two largest, there's a couple smaller items, but the two largest items out there are the 2 auditoriums at the high schools.
So this money couldn't be just taken out of the surplus money we have and just pay for it?
No.
It could though.
Well, we could. We needed to put an appropriation in the general fund to do so, and that would,
But you could, if
We could.
council and you
Sure.
decided to do it.
possibly, yes, yeah.
I think that's all. Is there any plans for the land? Because it says planning, so I didn't know what the planning means. Is there any plans for that lot right now?
At the current time, we would look to restore the area for enlargement of the parking.
Any plans to continue on with this idea of purchasing property in downtown for revitalization?
That depends upon what goes up for sale and what discussions may result from knowledge of the potential to purchase.
Because it'd be nice to see you try and look at Lower Center and South Colony Road right there, that whole corner there, if things go up, that's revitalization, that would really help the downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this board bonding ordinance from the public? There being none, I close the public hearing. Is there a motion and a second that the proposed ordinance appropriating $610,000 for the 33 North Cherry Street purchase and bond authorization be adopted?
Yes, so moved.
Moved by Councilor Laffin, seconded by Councilor Letourneau. And I bring it back to the council for discussion. Councilor Laffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this has been a long time in the making. I don't necessarily want anybody to think that the property went up for auction and we showed up and we won. Several months of discussion, years before that, potential sale, back and forth. Multiple councils have talked about it in executive session in some manner or another, whether it had to do with tax liens or future development potential, the IH zone, anything like that. Sure, right now there's a need and there's a use that we can, as a government, use that property for, and that would be parking to prepare it. The building's got to come down. But this also gives us the this gives us the opportunity as the town to piece this together with other town-owned property down there. That most of that parking lot is actually government-owned. That the town, the people own that. It's really the building on the other side of the parking lot that's Brothers. Piecing that together with the new IH incentives and the development that's down that comes into town, working with the Economic Development Commission. This has just been a long time coming, and I was initially very much against it several months ago, but as we talked more about it and we learned more about it and we learned about the potential and potential interest, and the need for a use in parking alone. Worst case scenario, it's a parking lot for a lot of properties down there that need it. But I think that this was a good buy. I know it sounds pricey. The 170 for demolition is an estimate. It'll go out to bid. Hopefully it'll be less. But I think it's a necessary step in the right direction. And with the same conviction that other councils have looked to develop other parts of the town parking areas, this council hopes to go forward with this area, at least speaking for myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Morgenstein.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I think it's really important that we say at the forefront that the discussion at the council end was that this property, this parcel, the goal for it is development. And hopefully this purchase signals to developers that the town is interested in such a thing. I think talk of parking scares me. Because if we just turn this into parking, then we have not done what we've set out to do. And that is to attract interest. We're near the new train station. There's the development at the Parker Apartments, and there's moving up Center Street. There certainly are owners who are looking for a big payday, and the fact is we have to start somewhere, and we have started rather small. When you look at the amount that the town has put in, some people would say, well, you're not really showing a big commitment, but we are showing a commitment, which is a change in energy and a change to signal to these developers. The developers have been very invested in helping with the planning and zoning regulations. They have been given by Casey Hand and that commission signals that the town is making changes that can allow them to do what we see in our POCD. Retail on the bottom, housing on the top. If some portion of this were to be parking, the bottom of Center Street would certainly be happy to have that. If the blue and the white elephant, I'll call the white, they're both a white elephant, were to then be able to turn over because a first property, I think once a first property ever gets developed, you will see things start to happen. And so this is the town and the council and the mayor saying, we are willing to make an investment that will move forward toward development of lower downtown. And this is what we need, and this is what our new train station is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to go back about the bonding situation, and just to get the numbers correct, it's 610, we're putting aside 170,000 for demolition and whatever, and 29 for contingency. Is that?
Contingency and financing fees and everything else that would take care of.
Okay, so when we say financing fees, are we talking about debt service?
No, the debt service would be the repayment of the bonds. We're talking legal fees, such as from Attorney Fozzie and for the fiduciary firm that we utilize to sell bonds.
Okay, so fees that we would incur only if we bond.
Correct.
Okay, so in the questions that were asked before, my understanding is we're going to go out to bid for these things. We know how much the property acquisition is, but the other ones are question marks. And
To my knowledge, yes.
and once we get those numbers, are we gonna spend and then bond, or are we gonna bond and then spend?
It's usually what we do. We usually spend and then bond, but if we have hardcore numbers that are within this $610,000 before whatever next step has got to be taken that the council chooses, then we could tack that on with the next bond issue, which is going to be coming up soon.
I'm just trying to figure out procedurally, because you said about the 590, you came in at 590, we would spend the money and then bond.
Correct.
Okay, so,
It depends on the timing of the expenditures, but that's correct. We could bond all 610 now. Frankly, we don't really do that too often in case the costs come in lower than that. You don't want to overbond. So it depends on how the costs. That's why as the costs come in and we get a really finite number, it just makes it much easier to do.
yeah, because I'm looking at, I mean, since I've been up here, we've talked about demolition of the American Legion building. We talked about demolition of the property by Tyler Mill. And if I recall correctly, both of those were estimated to be about $50,000. So I don't know how we get to 170 here, but I leave it to whatever's going on here. But I'm trying to figure out if we're paying it already from reserves.
No.
Well, it's got to come from somewhere. So we're not taxing the people more to get the money.
Yes.
If we're paying it and then bonding it, the money has to come from an account that presently exists. That would be a reserve account.
What happens is if the council authorizes this tonight, we set up a separate bookkeeping fund for it, so it's sequestered all by itself, and all financial revenue and activity is recorded in that separate bookkeeping fund. It's not commingled with the general fund at all. So it's a two-pronged.
Where does that get funded from?
I'm sorry?
Where does that account get funded from?
You mean from the cash? From
Whatever.
the cash?
You
Well, you're
create
talking
an
two different things.
account.
You're talking cash and or you're talking bookkeeping, or both.
I'm talking physically. In order to pay the bill,
Yep.
you got to put money in the account. The money that goes into that account to pay the bill, if we're not raising taxes, we're not doing a special appropriation, the only place that I know that it comes from is reserves.
No, it comes from the bond authorization. That's our authority to spend. Now, when we start spending cash, our cash is pooled into one banking account, if you will. Then it is split out among all the separate bookkeeping funds that we have. The largest being the general fund, as you've said. That's the tax fund, if you will. This is another, just think of all of our bookkeeping funds as columns. And if we had to pay $20,000 tomorrow, well, actually we couldn't have to wait till the referendum period would pass, which I believe is about 21 days or something like that. So if the council approved this tonight, in 21 days, we actually set up a bookkeeping fund which sequesters these funds from all other funds. And if we had to pay 10,000 in cash, 8,000 in cash, 20,000 in cash, it just comes from our pooled cash account. We record that as a, let's say the expenditure is one side of it, and there's actually would be a cash deficit in that account until we actually take action such as sell the bonds.
So we write a rubber check.
No, we don't write a rubber check.
I'm just trying to, this doesn't make any sense to me, how we can write a check without
Assume
funding the
we have a bank account right now, there's 18 million in it. It would come out of that. And when we add across all of our columns, cash for every bookkeeping fund we had, that's the total, let's say $18 million.
That's the
And this part,
Isn't
this
that
this
reserve?
one bookkeeping fund would have a negative cash balance until we do something like sell the
And
bonds.
so we take the money, from the 18 million, and we put it into the account, and then we're flush, right?
We don't take anything anywhere. That money stays in the bank account. We cut a check, let's say we had to pay 10 grand. The check gets cut, we pay the $10,000 for whatever cost it is, and that bookkeeping fund now has a $10,000 cash deficit. But when you add up all the other accounts, all the other sequestered separate bookkeeping accounts, you're still at $18 million.
Well, when you wrote
minus 10,000.
When you wrote the $10,000 check, did you write a $10,000 bond at some point?
Do I write it? No, it'd be all inclusive in with the bond.
Was any bond written to offset that $10,000 expenditure in your story here?
No.
Okay.
I'm trying, Craig. I don't know.
You're either writing a rubber check or you're taking the money from reserves.
Well, wait a minute. I
think-
object to the term rubber check, Craig. Please don't go on the record with that. Okay?
I think-
Because that's not correct.
I think the
That's not
comptroller
correct.
follows generally accepted accounting principles. It is a discipline by itself, accounting, the rules. I'm not going to pretend to understand all of them, but I believe the comptroller does follow them to the letter. And if there's difficulty with this, I would suggest talking to him, but you're right in the middle of accounting rules, which are not always intuitive. They have their own discipline, their own explanation, and you really have to know the technical definition of any term you use, or it's impossible to understand exactly the procedures with accounting. That's why it's an academic pursuit all by itself.
I couldn't send to the council members, if you'd like, to all 9 of you, what that would actually look like once the...
Oh, no, I'm just trying to figure out how we write a check if we didn't bond it, we didn't take the money from reserves, and I probably would go to my grave trying to figure that one out. But anyway, moving forward, I voted against when this went up for auction, and I just wanted to be clear that I'm generally in favor of the acquisition of the property. I just was not in favor of the number that we were at, and, at the end, the number was to my satisfaction because it was well within what I was willing to agree to. I also, there's a lot of talk over the last, I've been up here about 10 years, the intentions that we have with properties. And I think, at least Councilor Morgenstern was pretty clear that the intent, at least in her mind, and I share that, is not to have an ongoing parking lot here. It's to incentivize someone to come into our downtown and utilize the IHC program and help to revitalize our downtown. So I just want that clear, because I don't want to be off here 10 years from now and somebody claim that it's the intention, that's at least my intention, to have a parking lot there, because it is clearly not. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Letourneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get into my thoughts, I wish I could run my business with this accounting method, because I'd have a ball with the IRS. It would just be phenomenal. I'd make all kinds of money. I understand accounting practices, and I understand, Mayor, what you're saying, but the dollars are the dollars. I don't care where the column is or what the column is called in governmental accounting. It's still real money. So just to pick up on what Councilor Fishbein, before he goes to his grave, is trying to figure out, is okay, we have the purchase price, we have the purchase price of the building, and we're gonna bond, tonight, we're gonna bond $610,000, but the 170 has gotta come from someplace. And I think all we wanna know simplistically, like had a sixth grader in front of you, simplicity, where is the 170 coming from?
From the town's funds, from the town's cash.
The
What you
town's
folks
cash.
are doing when you
Okay.
authorize me.
Wait, stop right there.
Okay.
Where is the town's cash? Where is it kept? Is it kept under your desk?
No, I hope
Is
not.
it in a box?
No, you'll have people up there trying to shoot me. No, there's not 18 million under my desk.
Okay, so where is that?
It's in a bank, it's in a bank account, or invested, yeah.
It's in a bank account.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Bank account, certificates of deposits, treasury bills,
Fine.
et cetera, et cetera.
Fine. Let's peel the onion back a little bit more. Is that part of the general fund? Is that part of the rainy day fund? Where is that?
No, it has nothing to do with the rainy day fund.
Okay, it's the general fund.
It's simply cash that the town has to operate to conduct its operations. That's all it is.
Okay, so
What you
that would be the general fund, yes?
No, it's every fund that we have. The general fund is the largest fund that we have. Yes, if that's your phrase, that's correct. But there's other bookkeeping funds as well. We have, as we talk about every year, the cap and non-recurring budget. That's got about, out of that 18 million, a million and a half is owned by the cap and non-recurring fund. It's on that balance sheet. Every fund has its own balance sheet, just like you have a balance sheet with your business. You would need, if we separated all our balance sheets, we present them in a columnar form in our audit. I don't have our audit here, but if you added up all of that, those balance sheets, the cash position of the town at a certain point in time, that's what we have either invested or in, cash, checking, savings,
Okay.
et cetera.
All right, taking that thought, so you have different accounts, different columns, how many there are. There could be, I don't know, there could be 5, there could be 50, there could be 500, I don't know.
No, there's about 30, yeah.
Okay, out of the 30, so where would that 170 fall in those, what account? I think that's what we're looking for, is just where is this money?
Well, you're talking an account. Don't confuse it with a bank account, because it's all one bank account, give or take. It's the authority to spend. What you folks are doing tonight, if you approve this, and if the public allows it to pass referendum 21 days, you are allowing us legally to spend money on this
That's not the
project.
dispute. The dispute is not that. We're gonna spend the money. I just wanna know the money that we're going to spend, where is it?
It's just in our general investments and our pooled cash. Our cash is pooled and then broken out by each bookkeeping account. So this account, if we spend $5,000 the day after these funds become legally available to us, that bookkeeping balance sheet for this fund that we're going to establish will show a negative $5,000 and a negative.
Okay, right there. If it's gonna show a negative $5,000 hypothetically.
Just in cash.
Just in cash.
Yep.
Where is that fund? What fund? I mean, there's gotta be a line that it comes out of. Where's
Correct.
that line? What is that line?
There's another line on the balance sheet, which would be your fund balance, if you will. That fund balance would also be a negative $10,000, because there would be no revenue yet to offset that until we sell the bonds.
Okay, I'm not gonna belabor this. I'm gonna go to my grave with this too.
I'm sorry,
That's just amazing. I still can't get the answer.
I don't know how to present it to you.
But I know you don't, and maybe I'm not asking you correctly.
No, you are.
Simplistically, where is the money? Where is the money that we're taking it from?
Oh.
What column? Is it account B? And if it's account B, what is that account?
We recognize the cash in the general fund to start off with, yes. So it's sitting in the general fund. So right now, if we spend $5,000, let's just say the day afterwards it's approved, the general fund actually owes this bookkeeping fund $5,000.
Good.
Does that help?
That helps.
Did that help, Mr. Fishbein?
We're going back to the beginning. It's
No.
coming out of the general fund.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, Go ahead.
Just one thing to keep in mind, the revenues coming in, expenditures are a fluid matter. I mean, you're spending money, revenues are coming in at intermittent, regular times throughout a year. So accounts are going up and down. It's not like you have a static amount, 5,000 is gone, and that's not replaced by anything. There's a fluidity to it.
Mayor, I understand the fluidity to it, but if a resident asks me, as an elected official, where's this money coming from? I can't go, I don't know. I'd like to give them an answer. It's coming out of the general fund, or it's coming out of Fund B, or it's coming from someplace. They have the right to know. It's their money. And fluidity, yes. My business is fluid on a daily basis. Funds come in, funds go out. I understand that.
But
That's basic accounting. But this gets a little more complicated, but it's too complicated for, if it's complicated for us up here, what's it doing to the people at home that can't understand it?
Well, that's why we hire someone with the academic credentials and the experience who knows the accounting rules, meets all of those requirements, and handles and manages the assets, the financial assets of the town. And when that doesn't happen properly, it's made known to us by auditors, and corrections are made. But that's why it's a profession. It does involve complicated concepts, and it requires understanding of a variety of things, including definitions and what is permissible and not permissible under accounting rules.
And that is a shame if municipal or governmental accounting has gotten to that point. That's really a shame, because it should be much easier for the common person to understand. If I operated my business the way this was operated, I don't know what I would do. Putting that aside, I'd like to ask a question about, once this is all done, the demolition, what are the plans for the demolition? Is there a beginning date or an end date, or how is this? Because my concern is, we approved money up here a while ago, months ago, quite a few months ago, for demolition of the Kaplan, the Wooding office building near the police department, and it's yet to be done. And, time has a way of dragging on, so I'd like to get a little tighter of when's the anticipated bidding process for this. Is it over the next month or two? And then once the bid is awarded, when will the demolition actually take place?
We're hoping that once the 30 days have elapsed and the money's available, we'll have bid price soon after that, be able to award a bid, and as soon as they're able to do the work, have it performed.
Okay. And as far as the payment on the building, there is a window there that we have to pay the bank by, was it within 30 days?
It's a few days beyond the 30 days in order to allow us to be writing a check, but we'll have to wait until we take possession of the property, obviously, so it can't.
Police sign shop.
Oh,
Police sign shop.
The what?
are you talking about?
No, I'm talking about this property.
Yeah, he's talking about this
We're
property.
talking this property, okay,
Yeah,
you said something about the police, the Wooding
Oh,
building.
no, the Wooding building that we had approved money for,
That's a separate, okay.
that's separate.
That's a separate.
And
I'm sorry,
that's
I miss,
there's nothing happening up there, and I
Well,
don't know.
that's tied in with the Scow building, which you will be probably seeing at the next meeting.
yeah,
But
very soon.
But with regard to the brothers, we won't own the property until we pay for it at the court date. What is it?
The approval of the sale to the town of Wallingford is on a court calendar for November 5. Once that is approved, the town is required to close within 30 days of that court approval. So we've got to close by, it's probably the 5th of December.
Okay, and the check that the town gave them at the time of the auction, I think it was 47,000, is that held in escrow, or is that already gone to the bank, or?
it's already been given to the court, but the court doesn't cash that until they approve the sale.
Okay,
Like we had one Monday that in our private law office, the court approved the sale, and you could tell that the check was cashed the same day. So they don't cash the town's check till the court approves it. If the court, for some reason or other, did not approve the sale, they return that check to us.
okay, so with the court, when the court cashes that check, that'll be deducted from the 411.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And that, the 47,000 came from, I hate to ask, but I'm going to. Where did that come from?
The $47,000, the council approved the appropriation of those funds, I believe, 2 meetings ago.
I know that, but where did it come
That
from?
was from the CRRA distribution funds.
Okay, good. That's it. Good, thank you. Okay, I just asking these questions on a demolition because, you know, we don't have a good record of demoing things in a timely fashion, and I'd like to see that down as soon as possible. But that's my thoughts on that. And I agree with the other counselors that this hopefully will be a stimulus for downtown as far as the incentive housing district, and I think it'll be a good thing for the town. And one other thing, Attorney Small did a wonderful job at the auction bidding on this, and the underbidder was bidding in $5,000 increments, and Attorney Small, prudent with the town money, was $1,000 increments. So she handled it very professionally and did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Shortell.
Right, Jim, start over. The money came from where? No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. No, I've only been up here almost 3 years, and this is one of those, downtown development's been one of those issues that it's not Democrat, it's not Republican. Everyone up here, wants to see this happen, and one of the things you've heard a lot is, well, what's happening downtown by the train station. A lot seems to happen uptown, so I think this is a good thing for that reason. And I want to echo what Councilor Laffin said as far as, his own evolution on this. I was in a similar spot. I'm not a fan of, government buying buildings. I'm a fan of the free market, but the more that we looked at this, the more I looked at this, I think it's a win-win. And again, to echo what Tom said, it's, the plan right now is it's going to be a parking lot. If something else happens, that's great, and we hope something does happen. And that's one of the things you just talked to Tim Ryan, our economic director. I mean, he's talked about that, the difficulty that developers have assembling these parcels. So that's certainly a good outcome. But if that doesn't happen and this does become a new parking lot, that isn't the worst thing, I don't think, because that would benefit any new businesses that go in down there. They could leverage that. We have requirements around restaurants having a certain number of parking spaces and businesses, and if you're right along Quinnipiac or Hall Ave and you go in down there, you could take advantage of that. And even if you couldn't take advantage of the specific zoning, you could put a business on lower Center Street that you're within walking distance of a nice lot. So I think it's a win-win, and I'm grateful that we live in a town with this kind of fiscal management where we can have these debates and talk about how we're going to spend this money, because it doesn't always have to be that way in this economy. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, and I think it bears repeating, Chris touched on it at the end of his comments there. It's not just for the purpose of some other development. Even as a parking lot, it provides some incentive for other investments, because parking requirements have been adjusted by planning and zoning, and with more public parking available, that can be a benefit to some other property that wants to intensify structure, and now parking is in the vicinity to allow them to do something else. So either way, it really encourages investment in that area of town.
Thank you, Councilor Morgenstein.
Yeah, I just want to remind people that, yes, like the mayor said, there were adjustments made to parking, and there is some in lieu of provisions. So I think when we talk about economic developer with Tim Ryan, when we talk about planning and zoning, when we talk about initiating our POCD plan and meetings that are happening with the POCD implementation committee, looking at all of it is so, so important. There is this whole in lieu of portion now in the parking requirements, and there has never been an initiation to have a parking authority, but really looking at the big, big picture is what needs to come into play here to get things going. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, I don't think this should be bonded. We run into this a lot. And, I think we should be paying for it in cash. We're certainly incurring fees as a result of the bonding. As, Mr. Bose did say, acquisition costs, financing costs. In addition to that, we have debt service. So we're going to have to pay interest on the bonds. So, I'm opposed to what's before us here tonight, and I intend to vote no. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Bose, I've been up here just as long as Councilor Fishbein, and I have been witness and party to these types of bonding ordinances for similar transactions. And am I correct to state that in the time I've been up here, we've never had a less than clean audit?
That's correct.
And in fact, these types of transactions would be the subject among all the other transactions in the budget, but these transactions would be reviewed as part of the audit. Is that correct?
All funds are all bookkeeping funds are audited. Yes, that's correct.
Including these transactions?
Correct.
Okay. All right, with that, Councilor Testa.
Thinking back to a lot of purchases that I've seen from while in office, if we were to choose to use funds on hand, would we not still be passing this ordinance?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Don't we always pass an ordinance of this type whenever we need to appropriate a large purchase like this? And even if you chose, because we have the option of not bonding, we still have to pass this ordinance appropriating the purchase,
That's correct.
appropriating the funds, authorizing the purchase, and authorizing the issuance of bonds.
That's correct.
It's always if we choose to. We end up doing it frequently, more often than not. But even if you wanted to use cash, would we still not have to pass this ordinance?
That's correct. We need the authority
We've
to,
always talked about that why, but this is how we do it. We have to have an ordinance which can be challenged in public to authorize the expenditure. And as a part of that that ordinance, we're also authorizing the issuance of bonds if we choose to go that route, which we typically do. So even if, as you said, Councilor Fishbein, you're going to vote against this because you want us to use cash, in effect, the no vote would really more look like you're against the purchase. Because if you're for the purchase and not the bonding, it's the only way we can buy it. We have to do this ordinance in order to buy this property. Am I correct? Or unless we change the whole way we do business.
if the council wished to, they could appropriate it directly from the general fund if they wished to. But that would be a hit to the general fund this fiscal year. And when you close this fiscal year out, any deficit that's, could lead to a deficit, which is why you bond long-term commitments. Smooth it out over its expected life.
So that if we wanted to use cash, we would not have to do this ordinance authorizing the bond.
Well, it's not just cash. You got to get the word cash out of your minds. We talk about this every budget season and frequently after that. It's the effect on the income statement, if you will, of the town. If you guys appropriate funds other than in a bond issue, that's going to cause an expenditure of $600,000 all at once in the general fund, instead of $60,000 a year if it's sold for 10 years.
I understand the difference of that. I mean,
I wouldn't recommend that you pay.
I understand it because it's a large.
I could use the term pay.
Well,
cash.
I'm
would not
talking
recommend-
logistics now.
Yeah.
In response to Councilor Fishbine's comments. For example, just a few minutes ago, you told us that the $4,000 to $7,000 deposit check was paid for out of the CRRA fund,
Correct.
okay?
Well, we needed that.
But that's a hit. Why didn't we do $4,000 a year for the next 20 years?
Well, it was also.
The logic, it's just a bigger number.
It's a larger number, but there's also the timing issue. The law department needed that $47,000. There was no time for the public hearing. There was no time for the 21 or the 30-day referendum potential period. So having those funds available, they had to be appropriated in a different way.
Okay.
Going to a bond ordinance would not have been timely. We would not have been able to have the funds authorized to spend for for the bid last Saturday.
Makes
Or 2 Saturdays ago, whichever it was.
But knowing that there is $610,000 in undesignated reserve money in our audit, we could theoretically choose to spend that money.
If you chose to, yes.
Like this.
Yes.
Just do it. We could do that.
Yes,
I'm not
you could.
saying I'm in favor of it,
Yes, you could.
because I'm not, but we could, and then not have to pass a bonding ordinance.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
It would take a recommendation from the administration as well.
Correct. That's true too. Okay. There it is. Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Morgenstein.
Yeah, so thank you, Vinnie. You got to the crux of the matter. So I certainly, being on the other side of the aisle, at times have come up and said, why are we not bonding this? Why are we not bonding that? And so the administration sees things in certain ways. Governmental accounting works in certain ways. Our end of our fiscal year is very soon now. And yeah, I think just going on the record to say that $610,000 in the grand scheme of the general accounting balance is being lumped together with other big things, when maybe just spending $610,000 would not be growing this fund that has been growing and growing under the way that we've been doing business. I think I've made it obvious, I'm very much in favor of this property. If there were any willingness to not be bonding this and using we won't use the word cash, using a general fund money from the pool, if there were any willingness to do that, I would certainly be in favor of that, along with Councilor Fishbein.
Councilor Laffin.
I was going to say a lot of what Councilor Testa said, and then because Councilor Morgenstein commented, I'll add. It's again, this is the way that we typically just do business, or we have, and it's and like we said, we've done this before and then not bonded the same way, or when it comes budget time, it gets adjusted. So this is just kind of normal practice. It doesn't necessarily mean we're bonding, but at the same time, we always have people that come to the mic saying, we need to bond everything. So it's like, which is it going to be? I think this is just prudent. This keeps all of our options on the table. It capitalizes on our AAA bond rating if we choose to go that route. But maybe when it comes time to actually budget things around, it'll come out different. But I think this is the most rational way to approach this, and giving everybody the opportunity to comment like this. Thanks.
All right. That appears. Oh, Councilor Testa.
I had another question, which gets back to just the meat of the issue here. the question was asked, and I don't recall the number. Was there, were there back taxes owed on this property that led to the foreclosure? Or the answer is, were there back taxes that this property owner had with the town leading, that we're not gonna get? Just so that everything's on the table here.
Taxes, yeah. I
For
forgot.
back taxes as well as utility
Right.
bills, and they'll have to be written off.
Right, roughly, how much was that? Was it 40-something thousand?
Between the two,
I
probably.
thought in my mind, the figure of 33,000.
That, okay. That's what I thought, too, somewhere around 40, yeah, okay. I just wanted to clarify, because there were people asking that question, I wanted to give that information. Okay, thank you.
All set, thanks.
Yep. All right. That seems to be all the council discussion there is on this bonding ordinance. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Okay. Fishbein,
No.
Laffin,
Yes.
Letourneau,
Yes.
Marone,
Yes.
Morgenstein,
Yes.
Shortell,
Yes.
Testa,
Yes,
Chairman Cervoni,
Yes.
and the ordinance is adopted.
Yes, it is. All right, on to item 7, which is a report from the Wallingford Police Department regarding a recent escalation in instances of car break-ins and thefts. We have, for the Wallingford Police Department, Deputy Chief Mikulski.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chief Wright respectfully regrets not being here. He's on vacation, so he asked me to come instead.
Thank you. If you could move that mic a little bit closer. Thank you.
He was just at a meeting, community meeting, that he gave some numbers out. I think that Councilor Fishbein would just like to reiterate some of that stuff for the general public, if I'm not mistaken. In the past month, we've had like 17 car break-ins, as opposed to 13 in September. We're up about 22% as year over year from last year, the same time period. We're making a lot of headway. If you saw in the paper, just recently, I think it was yesterday, that we made an arrest, mostly juveniles, which all these car break-ins, or 90% of them anyways, are juveniles. I think I used the term, we won the battle and not the war. This is not going to stop. It's a trend that we're seeing in the South Central region, in Hartford as well. We have identified different groups for New Haven, the Waterbury area, New Britain area, Hartford area, that are all trending and doing this, these car break-ins. We have numerous patrol tactics that we're using to identify issues going on at night. And we're using our allocated resources that we have available to us to patrol certain areas, so less predictive policing. We're looking for hotspots where this is occurring, patterns, and trying to put most people in those positions when those things are occurring. That's where we're at this point. We do have some arrest warrants pending. We do have some arrest investigations pending. I'm not going to get into the specific tactics that we're using and what we're working with our partners, North Haven, Cheshire, Hamden, who's also experiencing quite a significant raise in these car break-ins. I have to say that one of the persons that was arrested on the 23rd or the 22nd was one of our suspects that we had on the 13th. So we've had approximately half a dozen car break-ins, car break-in events that have accounted for approximately 17 this month.
Thank you. When you refer to warrants, are the warrants ready for execution, or are they being reviewed?
We've had some issues. Well, there's a couple ready to be reviewed. We're looking for some search warrants for some investigative leads that we have. We've had warrants over the summer. We had a rash of break-ins that our detectives did a lot of work on. Arrested 2 adults on warrants, and we had warrants for 3 other individuals, juveniles, that the court denied. They were involved in multiple towns, theft from vehicles. The courts are using their discretion to sign these or not. I do have to say, though, that with the change in our juvenile justice rules and laws, there's no teeth behind anything for these juveniles now. We often come up to somebody call for a suspicious activity complaint or a call, and we'll get there and there'll be a car in the area and it'll take off at a high rate of speed and will not stop. It'll be a stolen car. But we're not going to take that chance of putting the public at risk, the officer at risk, and the liability for the town by chasing somebody for a property crime when we know they're juveniles and they're not going to stop until something bad happens.
And am I correct to recall from yesterday's press release that you did engage in pursuit, but it stopped when they got on the highway, the interstate?
We had enough people the other night on shift to set up a good perimeter and bring our dog in, and the dog was able to track to a shed on South Elm Street where a group of 4 or 5 individuals were held up waiting for the police to clear. When we made an arrest, while that was going on, a stolen car came through our perimeter, not associated with this call at all, that officers thought was associated with it, engaged it in pursuit down to exit 12 on 91, and we didn't have the resources from our agency nor from the state police at that point, and the risk was too great at that point to continue, and we disengaged.
And that's a policy that's not just a Wallingford policy, that's to terminate that type of pursuit.
We have a statewide pursuit policy in Connecticut. We have our own pursuit policy, but it mandates that our policy be stricter of the state policy. We can't be any less lenient or give any more leeway to our officers other than what's laid out in the state policy.
Thank you for clarifying that. If you're ready to take questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, Councilor Fishbein, this was your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Deputy Chief, for coming here tonight. We did have a meeting at Park and Rec with a Wallingford group that has been formed called Wallingford Watch, and a lot of what you've shared with us tonight was shared that night. And I know in Cheshire we had a meeting, there was a couple hundred people there about car break-ins, and they showed video and of some of these instances, and it's, the people that I talk to, they're concerned, especially about the escalation, kids and all of that stuff. One of the things that was of concern to me is the chief had shared at the meeting that on the overnight that there's between 4 to 8 cars that are patrolling the town. And I know that to my calculation, it's about $330 to put an officer on overtime. And I would expect that we're looking at that kind of stuff to perhaps increase the cars.
Putting more people on overtime?
Yes.
We are looking at it, and we are using that, but we have to work within the constraints of the budget that we've been afforded by the council.
Okay, so I know that we do give a bit of overtime in the budget, and do you have any idea whether or not you're tipping on the balance of expending that at this point of the year, or?
We typically slide into home with our overtime at the end of the fiscal year. We can, very tightly put our budget together every year, so there's some wiggle room, not a lot, and we look at it every day, if not, every 2 days, and see where we're at with our overtime. We're where we need to be that we've been for the last couple of years, at the same point in the year. But we are using overtime for some of this.
Okay, I just want you to know and the department to know if there's not enough money there and we run into a situation like this, we have an escalation of instances that, departments come to us all the time because they need more money. So, I just want you to be wary of that. I generally think that's all that I had tonight. I wanted an opportunity for the public to, hear from the department in a larger setting than at Park and Rec. And I know Jessica Tata is here who created that group. So that's generally all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You made reference to overtime. Am I correct to understand that if the dog's handler is not on shift and he gets called in, that's an overtime expense?
It is, and we try to be as cognizant of, as overtime, as I mentioned, as possible. Our first go-to is the state police. So if our dog handler is off shift, we look for a dog that's working, that's on the Parkway or 91 or one of our partner towns that's close by that can get up there pretty quickly. And if not, we call our dog handler on overtime, which we did for the last arrest.
Thank you. Councilor Laffin.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Great job this week. For everybody's benefit too, thank you, and I appreciate the withholding of certain information, security related or patrol related and things like that. That's just, I know sometimes people are like, well, how many cars are out there? You know, that all has to do with the way that the department's run and planned and thought out. So thank you for everything you've done, and great job this week. Everybody is just raving about it all over social media or friends, neighbors. Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're putting a lot of effort into it.
Councilor Letourneau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Chief, thank you for the job you do and your entire department. It's reassuring that for residents that we live in a safe town. One of the questions I had was when you use the term car break-ins, are these individuals actually like breaking a window to a car, or are the cars in a parking lot or in a home that are left open where they're going house to house looking for open cars?
That's the lion's share of it right there. Seldom do we see the windows being broken. When there's a crew going around or a group going around, a professional group that are very precise and they come in very quickly with multiple people, they'll hit usually of our hotels. But they'll hit us, they'll hit Meriden, they'll hit North Haven, and all in one night. But we're seeing mostly the cars that are being taken or have the keys in them, or the keys are close by. I heard one incident where the keys may have been in the house, but it was one of the push button starts. It would be started. But 90+%, the keys are in the vehicle and the vehicles are unlocked. We have video, and some of the residents in town have shared numerous video clips with us from their home surveillance that show these people coming up, trying the door handles, and if it doesn't open, they move on. So my suggestion would be, and we've put this out numerous times over social media, over press releases, lock your cars, take your valuables in your house, and please call us if you see something. I just heard tonight when I came in that there was some activity on Cook Hill Road where some cars were gone through. Again, they were open. No one called us. So we can't, you know, we try to have an omnipresence. We try to be around in the places and the times when these things are occurring. But if something else happens in town, our attention gets drawn someplace else, we need the eyes and ears of the public to give us a call. We typically, on incident numbers, do more suspicious activity complaints than anything else in town. By somebody calling and saying, hey, something doesn't look right. We don't mind those. We want those. Those are our eyes and ears on the road. So you're absolutely correct. Most of these are open.
So the big message to the residents is lock your car at night. Lock your car, period. No matter where you are, lock your car, and you can be a lot safer.
Absolutely, especially too if you got, a lot of people have the clickers for their garage doors. We've had some incident where they've hit the clicker for the garage door as well. So if you leave your car open and the clicker's in there, you're leaving your whole home and your family exposed.
That's a good point, yeah.
And most of these people, these aren't our kids. These aren't our kids from our town. These are kids from inner city. They're carrying weapons, and they don't want to go to juvenile hall or the court system. So they're typically going to do whatever they can do to get away from the police or a neighbor or a resident that surprises them and tries to stop them from doing what they're doing.
Thank you.
Anything else from the council? Any questions or comments from the public? Sir, in the back, if you, gentleman in the back, if you want to come forward to the microphone up front, please. And your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Mike Capetta, 246 Cook Hill Road, Wallingford. My question in the future, when you get the new radio system for the town, is it possible to have some kind of integration with texting for the neighborhood, or set up something to be able to communicate with the police department in a timely manner?
With the new system, I don't know if there's that capability, but we wouldn't want to have everybody texting when we're on emergency communications channels. That's going to impede what we need to do. There is now text to 911, where you can text to 911, and we have that capability in town. We just, within the last couple of months, put that in play. But there also is these neighborhood watches where a lot of people took their pamphlets from Celebrate Wallingford. Well, we haven't got any calls yet. Everybody's talking about, I know there's one group out there that's doing or discussing the car break-ins, but as far as typical neighborhood watches, taking care of your own stuff, watching your neighbors like we used to do years ago, if the neighbor was on vacation, you kind of looked over their house. We'd like to see that.
Very good. Thank you.
And our community police department, our community police division has all the information for that, if anybody wants to, have more information on that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Ma'am, microphone, please.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Tata. I've been kind of the facilitator of some of these community meetings. I just wanted to extend a huge thank you to the Wallingford Police Department. They have been super collaborative with the town residents. We all understand that this is an issue that is not going to end overnight. It may never end. But, coming together as a group with town leadership, thank you, Mayor, he also met with us, the Wallingford Police Department, and also seeking support from the state legislator. We did have Senator Fasano at our last meeting, and I think that is the one thing that we may not be able to solve in this room, but taking it up to the state legislator in revamping the juvenile criminal justice system, really. None of the repercussions are serving as a deterrent. These kids are repeat offenders, and there's no avenues for them to get rehabilitated in a quality way that's going to deter them from doing these things over and over again. So we were pleased to have State Representative Linehan Fishbein, thank you for being there and calling this to the agenda. So we do hope with community support and town council support, if we can make sure that we're reaching out to these judges and these prosecutors to approve these warrants, to make sure that these juveniles and adults are being held accountable. Because we all work really, really hard. We love Wallingford, and this is a safe town. We want it to continue to be a safe town. I've had countless people come to these meetings saying they just moved here because they thought it was a safe town, and then a week later they're getting broken into or cars are being stolen. So what I would ask the town council, chief, if there is a way to encourage New Haven, East Haven court systems to, address this in a more concrete way where people are being held accountable. Because right now, repeat offenders we understand first-time offenders, they're going to get accelerated rehab, they're going to get wraparound services, but there have been a number of cases where warrants have been issued on people that are repeat offenders, and we're talking multiple times these juveniles have offended and nothing is happening. So we ask for your support, and all we can say is we will continue to hold these meetings. Anybody is welcome to come. I do put it out on Facebook. We have a closed email group too that we share notes on, because we do not share the notes publicly on Facebook as, a courtesy to the Wallingford Police Department, because we understand that there's privacy issues there. And the residents understand the purpose of these community meetings are collaborative, they are productive, they are to serve as updates. We've had state legislators, we've had the police department, and our next step actually is to have some private companies that do video surveillance to come in and give residents tips and tools and other things that we can do as residents to take the onus on ourselves to improve our own personal property security. So again, thank you to everyone for this opportunity, for bringing it to the agenda, and we do hope that you can raise it up to New Haven Municipal Court and other court systems in the state to make sure our judges and our prosecutors are doing what they can to curb this. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Gross?
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. Good afternoon, how you doing? Quick question, does the police department have a Facebook page where they publicize these type of things?
We don't have a Facebook page now.
No Facebook page?
What we are, community police does work with press releases, they work with the press, they work with the Wallingford Forum. When we put out something, everybody knows about it.
Oh, my mic's on. It's him.
We don't have a Facebook page at this point.
Okay. How about, do you tweet or Twitter?
We do not.
Okay. Just because somebody had brought it up about contacting, and if you had a Wallingford Police page, it would, it would make a notification or tweet or something. It was just an easy way to reach. I don't really do Facebook either, so I don't, but many people do.
We reach out through the press. We put press releases out all the time. The problem is sometimes the media doesn't run anything.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. If you put out a press release, if it's happening now, and you put it on Facebook or tweet for a specific area, it's going out now. Nothing against the Record Journal or New Haven Register, but it's not going to be in there for a day or two if it makes it at all. Do you have, I was trying to, but there was another way of, and I mean, this is if there's a large area, how does our reverse 911 work? Can you segregate an area?
We can, but it's through Everbridge, through the state.
Oh, we don't have our own?
We do have our own. We have our own console for it, but there's certain rules and guidelines that we can use it for. We've used it in the past for missing persons, but for general notifications, it doesn't fall within the parameters of our use. But we can segregate. We can put a geo-grid around a certain area, and it calls back on the numbers for that area.
Because I remember the mayor had put out a couple of them during some of the storms.
That was an acceptable use through the
because
city.
our house unfortunately got hit, so our area got it. So I don't think some areas of town, I don't know who got the mail. And one to the overtime. Would it be in the yearly budget as crime goes up in town, no matter what happens here, crime is going up everywhere. I mean, there's a opiate crisis that's going on, and I'm not saying this is from it, but there's other crimes being committed that are from drugs and so forth. Maybe instead of overtime, that maybe in next year's budget, which is coming up soon, or the planning of the budget, time for more police. I know you got more, but it's time that the police department has to grow. I mean, you have big box stores as Walmart and more coming in that you spend a lot of time at, and that takes some of your manpower away from some of these types of neighborhood watches and so forth. And it's just the nature of the beast. And hopefully the mayor and the council will authorize 2-3 more officers in next year's budget so you can do even more diligence than you're doing now. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to speak? Chief, thank you very much for taking the time to come to this meeting tonight and for talking about your results and your efforts. It's all very important stuff, and I know you've heard from other counselors that we're all grateful for your work.
My pleasure. Anytime you need us, we'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further business on this agenda, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare this meeting adjourned.